This is Noah William, a titan of industry, about to accept the Philanthropist of the Year award. This is his wife, Audrey. In exactly 3 minutes, Noah will stand on that stage and deliver a speech that publicly humiliates her, calling her simple, childish, and his beautiful empty-headed charity case. He makes the entire room laugh at her. He doesn't know that Audrey's childish hobby, run from a secret lab under their home, has made her the 9th wealthiest woman in the world. And he definitely doesn't know that her company, Aura Therapeutics, is the mysterious entity that just bought all his debt. The laughter will stop. But for Noah William, the collapse is just beginning. The penthouse apartment on Park Avenue was less a home and more a statement of altitude. Noah William liked being high up. He liked looking down, whether it was from his corner office at William Innovations or from the 80th floor triple-paned windows of his residence. Everything below was a map he owned. Noah was a man sculpted from self-made mythology. He was all shark white teeth, deep baritone, and bespoke suits that cost more than a teacher's annual salary. He had built William Innovations from a modest consulting firm into a ravenous private equity monster, swallowing distressed assets and restructuring them, a polite term for firing thousands for profit. He was, by all accounts, a master of the universe. And then there was Audrey. To the glittering, sharp-edged world of New York high society, Audrey Hayes was Noah's greatest and simplest acquisition. She was quiet where he was loud, soft where he was brutal. She was an academic, a biologist by training, but she hadn't worked a day since their wedding. While Noah conquered Audrey, gardened. She volunteered at the botanical gardens. She read. She sketched in a series of leather-bound notebooks. Noah found this profoundly endearing and simultaneously pathetic. "What are you doodling now, darling?" he'd ask, loosening his tie as he walked in, his voice booming with the false cheer of a man who didn't really want an answer. "Protein chains," she'd murmur, not looking up from her book. "Right. Well, don't strain yourself. Our big night is tomorrow. The gala. You need to look rested." He tossed his keys into a crystal bowl, the sound like a small gunshot in the marble foyer. "And wear the blue. The simple one. The one I like." Audrey'd just nod. Of course, Noah. This was the rhythm of their life. His pronouncements, her acquiescence. But Noah was blind. He mistook her silence for simplicity. He mistook her stillness for weakness. He had no idea that beneath the cultivated soil of her hobbies, Audrey was tending to something far more complex than roses. Lately, Noah had been under a strain that even his monumental ego couldn't fully conceal. William Innovations was over-leveraged. He'd made a series of bad bets on commercial real estate, convinced the return-to-office wave would be a tsunami. It had been a ripple. He was bleeding capital, and the vultures at the Wall Street Journal were starting to circle, sniffing out the weakness. "Carter, you fix this." He'd been shouting into his phone earlier that day, his knuckles white on the glass railing of his balcony. Benjamin Carter, his COO, was a mirror image of Noah, just paler and more nervous. "We're trying, Rick." Carter's voice tinny. "The margins are just too thin. We need a massive influx of cash, or the Q4 report is going to be a bloodbath. We need this new acquisition to go through, this Aura Therapeutics. If we can absorb their patent portfolio before the audit, we can use their assets to cover our losses." "Then get it done," Noah snarled. "Find out who this mysterious CEO is. Nobody stays anonymous in this town. Find him, flatter him, buy him. I don't care. I need that company." He hung up and turned back inside. Audrey was arranging flowers in a vase, the picture of domestic tranquility. Big day tomorrow, Audrey, he said, smiling, the stress melting away. He was Noah William. He always won. Yes, Noah. Philanthropist of the Year. It's wonderful. It is, he said, patting her on the head as one would a favored golden retriever. It's good for the brand, and it's important people see us together, see our perfect life. He glanced at her notebook open on the counter. Just leave what is it? Protein doodles, leave them at home. Tomorrow you just have to smile and look pretty. Can you manage that? Audrey looked up, her blue eyes as clear and deep as an Arctic lake. She gave him a small, slow smile. I can manage that, Noah. The grand ballroom at the plaza was a sea of black ties and shimmering gowns. Chandeliers dripped crystals like frozen rain, and the air hummed with the sound of 100 conversations, all centered on money, power, and who was failing. Noah William was in his element. He moved through the crowd like a shark, all grace and latent threat. Audrey was a silk-clad shadow at his side, wearing the simple blue dress he'd demanded. It was elegant, but in a room of couture peacocks, it was designed to make her fade. Rick, my boy. A voice like gravel cut through the din. Connor McDermott. Noah's oldest friend and most bitter rival clapped him on the back. Connor ran a competing fund and had a reputation for being just as ruthless as Noah, but with a thin veneer of sleazy charm. Connor, good to see you upright, Noah replied with a tight smile. Connor's eyes slid to Audrey. He took her hand and kissed it, lingering just a second too long. Dr. Hayes, you are as always the most breathtaking woman in the room. This color, it's divine. Rick, you truly outkicked your coverage. She's my best investment, Connor, Noah said, pulling Audrey closer by the waist, his grip just a little too tight. A low-risk asset, with a high beauty yield. How financial of you, Audrey said, her voice quiet, withdrawing her hand from Connor's. It's just business, darling. Noah chuckled, steering her away. McDermott is a snake. Don't trust him. The dinner was endless. Course after course of meticulously plated food they barely touched. Finally, the main event. A senator introduced Noah, listing his supposed charitable donations. Donations Audrey knew were shrewdly calculated write-offs. Noah took the stage to thunderous applause. He stood at the podium, basking in the light. He looked golden, invincible. He began his speech, thanking the board, the city, his team. Standard fare. But, he said, his voice dropping into a register of false intimacy, the real person I have to thank is my wife, my beautiful Audrey. He motioned for her to stand. Reluctantly she rose. The spotlight swung, catching her, pinning her like an insect. You know, folks, Noah continued, a folksy, patronizing grin spreading across his face. They say behind every great man is a great woman. Well, my Audrey, she's not great. She's simple, and I mean that in the best way. A few nervous titters rippled through the crowd. Audrey's smile was frozen, her face pale. While I'm out here in the jungle, wrestling with SEC regulations and hostile markets, she's at home. She's tending to her roses. She's drawing little pictures in her notebooks. He chuckled, and this time the crowd, sensing permission, joined in. She reminds me what it's like to have a simple, uncluttered mind. A childish mind, really. She's my own little charity case, aren't you, darling? He raised his glass to her. She keeps me grounded by reminding me that not everyone is built for the fight. Some are just built to be pretty. To my simple, beautiful wife, Audrey, thank you for making my complex life look so good." The room exploded in applause. It was cruel. It was public. It was a complete and utter assassination of her character, disguised as a toast. Flashes popped, capturing her rictus smile. Noah Basking blew her a kiss from the stage. Audrey sat down. Her hands were perfectly still in her lap. Connor McDermott from across the room looked at her with something like pity, which was almost worse. Benjamin Carter at her own table was laughing so hard he was wiping his eyes. She sat through the rest of the applause. She watched Noah accept the heavy crystal award. She watched him preen. And then, as the dessert course was being served, she discreetly pushed back her chair. "Excuse me," she murmured to the table. "Just powdering my nose." She walked, not ran, to the exit. Her back was straight. Her pace was even. She didn't look at anyone. The moment she was in the marbled quiet of the ladies' lounge, she pulled her phone from her clutch. She didn't check her reflection. She didn't wipe away a tear, because there wasn't one. There was only ice. She dialed a single number. "Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice no longer soft, but a blade of cold steel. "Dr. Hayes," a crisp, professional voice replied. "How was the speech?" "Predictable," Audrey said, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The woman in the simple blue dress looked back, but her eyes were lethal. "He just publicly defined me as a simple, childish, empty-headed charity case. I believe that satisfies the public disparagement clause in our post-nuptial agreement, doesn't it?" "It does, Doctor, with prejudice." "Good. Initiate Phase 2. Activate the Aura protocols. I want a full press release on the Journal's Wire by 9 a.m. Announce our Q3 earnings and the completion of the new patent acquisition. Then I want you to execute the buy-up of William Innovation's remaining unsecured debt from the holding company in Zurich. All of it." "And the acquisition?" Harrison asked. "He thinks he's hunting us," Audrey said. "He's about to find out he's the prey. Send the offer, not to his board, directly to his creditors. We're not buying his company, David. We're buying his debt. We're foreclosing. It will be a massacre, Dr. Hayes." "He called it business, David," Audrey said, smoothing her simple blue dress. "Let's show him what good business looks like. I'll be home in an hour. We have work to do." She hung up, took a deep breath, composed her face back into a mask of placid neutrality, and walked back out to the gala to congratulate her husband. To understand how Audrey Hayes could topple a giant, you had to understand what Noah William refused to see. 16 years ago, Audrey Hayes didn't exist. There was only Dr. Audrey Francis, a postdoctoral fellow at Johns Hopkins, with a mind that moved like lightning. She wasn't just in the field of cellular biology. She was on the verge of redefining it. Her focus targeted drug delivery. How to get chemotherapy to kill a cancer cell without touching the healthy cell next to it. It was the holy grail of oncology, and she was sketching the map. Then she met Noah William. He was charming, powerful, and utterly intoxicating. He loved her brilliance, but only as an ornament. When they got engaged, he'd laughed at her $42,000 a year fellowship. "You won't need that, darling," he'd said, slipping a diamond onto her finger that was worth 10 times that. "You're with me now. You can—" "What is it you do?" "Put things in petri dishes." "You can do that as a hobby." Audrey, blinded by what she thought was love, agreed. She'd put her hobby aside. But a mind like hers doesn't just turn off. It just goes quiet. For the first 2 years of their marriage, she tried to be the wife he wanted. She hosted dinners. She chaired charities. She redecorated the penthouse. And she felt herself dying. The doodles Noah mocked were her lifeline. They were complex molecular structures, algorithms for protein folding equations that existed on the bleeding edge of biochemistry. The turning point came 6 years into their marriage. Noah, in a fit of pique over a bad deal, had stormed into her study. "This is what you do all day. Draw nonsense. It's embarrassing, Audrey." "My wife, the professional daydreamer." "Clean this crap out. We're turning this into a cigar lounge." That night, she didn't argue. She simply moved, under the guise of a wine cellar expansion and a geothermal refit for the garden. Audrey had commissioned a separate construction. Deep beneath the manicured roses and the flagstone paths of their Connecticut estate, the one Noah only visited for weekend parties, she built her sanctuary. It was a 2,000-square-foot, soundproofed, lead-lined, biosecure laboratory. It had its own ventilation, its own fiber-optic line, and its own power grid, buried and silent. While Noah was upstairs hosting garden parties, Audrey was downstairs in a lab coat, running simulations on a private server cluster. She solved it. The patent was for a synthesized liposome, a smart fat molecule that could be programmed to find a specific cell marker, like a cancer cell, and deliver its payload only to that cell. It was a revolution. It meant an end to the brutal side effects of chemotherapy. It meant life. She filed the patents under her maiden name, Dr. Audrey Francis. She knew she couldn't build it alone. She needed a bulldog, a businessman, who was everything. Noah was smart, ruthless, and driven, but with one key difference: integrity. She found him in David Harrison. Harrison had been the general counsel for a pharmaceutical giant that Noah had tried and failed to acquire. Noah had humiliated Harrison in the press, calling him a glorified paper pusher. Audrey, doing her research, recognized Harrison's brilliance. He hadn't been outmaneuvered. He'd been sandbagged by his own timid board. Audrey approached him in secret. She didn't show him a business plan. She showed him the data. Harrison, a man of cold logic, stared at her simulations for a full 10 minutes. He looked up, his eyes wide. "Doctor, do you have any idea what this is?" "I do," Audrey said. "The question is, how you know what to do with it." "This isn't a product," Harrison said, his voice trembling slightly. "This is a Nobel Prize. This is everything." Together, they formed Aura Therapeutics. Audrey provided the science. Harrison built the corporate fortress around it. They sourced seed funding from European venture capital firms who had no ties to Wall Street. They built labs in Switzerland and Ireland. For 8 years, Aura operated in total stealth. Audrey was the anonymous founder, Dr. Francis, and Harrison was the public-facing CEO. As Aura grew, so did its needs. Audrey recruited her old mentor, from Hopkins professor Alistair Finch, to head her R&D. Professor Finch's son, Matthew Finch, had just made partner at the prestigious New York law firm Morgan & Finch, the same firm Noah William used for his corporate dealings. Matthew, disgusted by Noah's arrogance and loyal to his father, became Audrey's silent legal weapon inside her husband's own camp. While Noah gave Audrey an allowance of $50,000 a month, which she dutifully spent on clothes and charity events he approved of Aura, Therapeutics was clearing $400 million a quarter. Audrey's personal stake, held in a complex series of trusts managed by Harrison, was estimated at north of $20 billion. Noah William thought he was a titan. He was a minnow swimming in his wife's ocean. The simple blue dress Noah had forced her to wear to the gala. It was a custom job. Woven into the silk fibers were biometric sensors recording the ambient sound heart rate variability and vocal stress patterns. The speech wasn't just an insult, it was evidence. When Audrey walked back into the ballroom, her smile was serene. Noah flushed with victory, and champagne pulled her to him. "See? That wasn't so bad, was it?" He whispered, his breath hot. "You looked beautiful up there. My simple, beautiful girl." "You were perfect, Noah," Audrey whispered back, patting his chest. "Absolutely perfect." He didn't feel the small pin she pressed into his lapel, a tiny, powerful microphone that would transmit his every word for the rest of the night directly to a secure server managed by David Harrison. The humiliation was complete. The trap was set. The game was on. Noah William woke the next morning with a blinding champagne headache and an ego the size of Manhattan. He felt magnificent. He'd put everyone in their place, his rivals, his sycophants, and most importantly, his wife. He padded into his home office expecting to spend the day fielding congratulatory calls. Instead, his private line was blinking with a frantic urgency. It was Benjamin Carter. "Rick, thank God. Are you seeing this?" Carter sounded like he was hyperventilating. "Seeing what the rave reviews of my speech." Noah poured himself a coffee. "Know the Wall Street Journal, turn it on." Now, Noah flipped on the 80-inch screen. The breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom. Mystery Biotech Aura Therapeutics releases stunning Q3 earnings, announces game-changer oncology patent. Stock surges 400% in pre-market trading. Noah froze the coffee cup halfway to his lips. Aura. That's our acquisition target. Carter. This is good news. Their valuation just skyrocketed. When we acquire them, our books will look incredible. It solves everything. "That's the problem, Rick," Carter shrieked. "They're not our target anymore. They're not a unicorn. They're a dragon. Their cash on hand is... Rick, it's more than our entire market cap. They can't be bought." Noah's blood ran cold. "What do you mean? Everyone has a price. Get Harrison on the phone." "I've been trying for 3 hours. He won't take my call. But that's not the worst part. Our debt. You know the unsecured notes we sold to that Swiss holding company to cover the real estate losses." "What about them?" Noah snapped. "They sold them. All of them. In a single block transaction processed at 5:01 a.m. this morning." "Sold them to who?" "Aura Therapeutics." The coffee cup slipped from Noah's hand, shattering on the marble floor. "What? They're our new creditors, Rick. They own us. Every bad loan, every leveraged bet. They hold the paper. This is a hostile move," Noah roared, panic finally breaking through his arrogance. "This is predatory. Who the hell is this David Harrison? Who is behind him? Find out, I want a name." He slammed his hand on his desk, his Philanthropist of the Year award rattling. "Get our lawyers. Get Morgan and Fitch. Get them now." He spent the next 48 hours in a state of escalating panic. He was a king, besieged in his own castle. His calls to his bankers went to voicemail. His texts to his board members were met with curt, formal replies. "We are monitoring the situation," one replied. "Monitoring, you're supposed to be fighting." Noah threw his phone across the room. Audrey was a ghost. She was at the Botanical Gardens or at a spa retreat. She left him polite, useless notes. "Noah, dinner is in the fridge. Please don't wait up." He barely noticed her absence. He was too busy watching his empire crumble. The first official notice arrived by bonded courier. It was an emergency summons for a meeting of the board of directors of William Innovations. The meeting had not been called by Noah. It had been called by the new majority stakeholder of the company's controlling debt. "They can't do that," Noah yelled at his lawyer Matthew Finch over the phone. "Actually, Rick, they can." Matthew's voice was cool, precise. "It's in the covenant of the loan agreement you signed. Section 4, subsection B. In the event of a credit rating downgrade, which we got last week, remember, the debt holder reserves the right to call an immediate board vote to assess executive leadership. You wrote that covenant, Finch." "Yes, I did," Matthew said. "I'm a very good lawyer. I protect my clients' interests. The meeting is tomorrow, 10 a.m., your office." Noah was trapped. He tried to move his personal funds, but his private banker finally called him back with chilling news. "Mr. William, I'm afraid your personal accounts and credit lines, they were all leveraged against your William Innovations stock. With your stock in free fall and your debt called in, I'm afraid your assets are frozen, pending review." He was broke, or at least he couldn't access $1. He sat in his vast, silent penthouse, the New York skyline glittering indifferently. He was cornered. For the first time in his life, Noah William was afraid. He thought back to the gala, the applause, the adulation. He thought of his speech, his perfect, cutting words. He thought of Audrey. Simple, he'd called her. A slow, creeping dread, colder than any market panic, began to settle in his stomach. He remembered her small, serene smile as he'd kissed her good night. He'd thought it was submission. He was a fool. He stormed through the penthouse. "Audrey, Audrey." She wasn't there. Her closet was not empty, but curated. Her personal effects, her sketches, her notebooks, all gone. The only thing left on her vanity was a single perfect withered rose. He was alone, and tomorrow he was walking into his own execution. The boardroom of William Innovations was Noah's cathedral. The walls were dark mahogany. The carpet was ocean-deep blue, and a 40-foot table, polished to a mirror finish, ran the length of the room. At its head sat Noah's custom-made chair, more throne than seat. But today he wasn't sitting in it. He was pacing by the window, his $5,000 suit rumpled, his tie askew. The board members' men he'd known and bullied for decades filed in silently. They wouldn't meet his eye. They just took their seats, their faces grim. His COO, Benjamin Carter, sat at the far end, visibly trembling, shuffling papers. "What is this, Ben?" Noah snapped. "A funeral. They're here." "Rick," Carter whispered, just as the main doors opened. In walked David Harrison. He was tall, impeccably dressed, with the impassive face of a federal judge. Beside him was Matthew Finch, Noah's own lawyer, now holding a briefcase that clearly wasn't for Noah's benefit. "Harrison," Noah spat, "you've got a hell of a nerve. You think you can just walk in here and—" "Please take a seat, Mr. William," Harrison said, his voice quiet but commanding absolute authority. The board members flinched. Noah instinctively moved toward his throne. "Not that one," Harrison said. "That chair belongs to the acting chairperson. Your seat is over there." He pointed to a small supplementary chair against the wall, one usually reserved for interns. "How dare you? Noah, sit down." Matthew Finch advised, his tone no longer friendly. "You are here as a guest. You have no voting rights. My shares. Your shares are pledged as collateral against the debt we now own," Harrison said flatly. "You own nothing. You are a spectator." Rage and confusion warred on Noah's face. Who is behind this? Who is Dr. Francis? Who is the CEO of Aura? I want a name. I will not be ambushed by some cowardly anonymous. I am not anonymous, Noah. The voice came from the doorway. Noah turned. The blood drained from his face. He swayed, gripping the back of a chair. Audrey Hayes walked into the room. She was not the woman from the gala. The simple blue dress was gone. In its place was a sharp, steel-grey bespoke suit. Her hair, usually soft and loose, was pulled back into a severe, elegant chignon. Her doodle notebook was gone, replaced by a sleek tablet. She wore no jewelry except her old, simple wedding band, which she twisted thoughtfully. She looked powerful. She looked like him. Audrey. Noah's voice was a choked whisper. What? What is this? Are you lost, darling? This is a closed meeting. Audrey walked past him, not even glancing his way. She took the seat at the head of the table. Noah's throne. It fit her perfectly. She placed her tablet on the table. The screen lit up, projecting the Aura Therapeutics logo onto the wall behind her. "Good morning, gentlemen," she said to the board. Her voice was the one he'd heard on the phone in the pantry, the one he'd dismissed as her talking to the garden club. It was crisp, clear, and absolutely commanding. "Noah, stop gaping. You look like a trout." "Audrey, this is insane," he stammered. "Is this a joke? Did you do this?" "Do what, Noah?" she asked, finally turning her icy gaze on him. "Build a multi-billion-dollar biomedical company from scratch, file 74, revolutionary patents, or buy the mountain of toxic debt you use to prop up this house of cards." "Yes, I did all of that." She turned back to the board. "Gentlemen, allow me to introduce myself. I am Dr. Audrey Francis Hayes. I am the founder, chief scientist, and CEO of Aura Therapeutics. As of 9:01 a.m., Aura has acquired a 68% controlling interest in William Innovations, having converted your company's catastrophic debt into majority equity. In short, I own this company. I own this room. And Noah." She looked at him, a small, cold smile playing on her lips. "I own you." Noah stared at her. His mind was breaking. The doodles, the protein, chains, doodles." Audrey laughed, a short, sharp, humorless sound. "Those doodles, Noah, were the base code for the Aura 7 liposome, the patent that is currently saving the lives of 20,000 stage 4 cancer patients, the patent that just made my company, more valuable than yours ever was, even at its peak. But the money," he sputtered. "You used my money. This is theft. Your money." Audrey almost looked amused. "Noah, the allowance you gave me, the one you so generously doled out, I donated it, all of it, to a shelter for battered women. Aura was funded by a pre-seed grant I won at Johns Hopkins, a grant you told me to throw away with my college clutter and 2 European venture firms. I haven't needed your money in over a decade. I just enjoyed watching you think I did." She stood up. The simple woman, the childish mind. It was the perfect cover. "You were so blinded by your own ego, you never once thought to ask me what I was really thinking about. You just wanted me to be pretty." She looked at the board. "The vote today is a formality. Noah William is removed as CEO and chairman effective immediately. Benjamin Carter is also terminated for, let's call it, gross mismanagement." Carter made a small squeaking sound. "This company," Audrey continued, "is being dissolved. The William Innovations name will cease to exist by close of day. Aura will be absorbing the few viable assets, and more importantly, the talent you've so thoroughly squandered. Everyone else will be let go." Noah finally found his voice, a high-pitched, desperate shriek. "You can't. This is my life, my name. You, bitch!" He lunged, not at her, but at the table, sweeping his arm across it, sending glasses and notepads crashing to the floor. "It's all lies. She's a fraud. She's—" "Noah," Audrey said, her voice sharp. "Sit down." He froze, his arm raised. The power dynamic in the room had shifted so completely, so seismically, that his body obeyed her before his mind could. He stared at his wife, the woman he had mocked, the woman he had shamed, and he saw her for the first time a stranger, a brilliant, terrifying stranger who had just stolen his life from under his nose. Noah Williams' world wasn't just collapsing. It was evaporating as if it had never existed at all. He stared at Audrey, his mind a screeching, buffering loop of cognitive dissonance. This was not Audrey. This was a chimera. This was a nightmare. He turned, grasping for the one pillar of reality he thought he had left. "Finch!" he barked, his voice cracking with a desperate, misplaced authority. "Matthew, what is this? This performance? This is a circus. Shut this down. You work for me. I'll have you disbarred, you." Matthew Finch, Noah's own lawyer, the man who had filed his lawsuits and shielded his assets, merely looked up from his briefcase. He closed it with a soft, final click. "Actually, Noah, I don't work for you," Matthew said. His voice was not cold like Audrey's, but laced with a quiet, simmering contempt that was somehow worse. "I haven't really worked for you for 8 years. You were just a client, a very loud, very demanding client." What are you talking about? You never once asked about my family, Noah. You just called at 3 a.m. and demanded I make it go away. You probably don't even remember my father's name. Noah's mind, frantic, searched. Your father, the professor. The old man at the Christmas party. Professor Alistair Finch, Matthew said, his eyes hardening. The old fossil you once told Audrey to stop wasting her time with. My father is the Chief of Research and Development for Aura Therapeutics. He's been Dr. Hayes's mentor since she was at Johns Hopkins. My loyalty, Noah, was never to your parasitic brand of capitalism. It was to my father. It was to the work. You used our firm to build a monument to your own ego. Dr. Hayes used me to build a legal fortress for a miracle. The betrayal was so total, so deep, Noah couldn't even process it. He was surrounded. He was in a cage he hadn't even seen being built. He fell back on his only instinct attack. "This is fraud," he roared, pointing a trembling finger at Audrey. "She's the fraud. She used my money. My resources. She stole this company. Noah, stop," Audrey said, her voice quiet, but slicing through his tirade. "You're embarrassing yourself. Let's talk about real fraud, shall we?" She signaled to David Harrison. "Mr. Harrison, the secondary file, please. Project Chimera." Harrison tapped his tablet. The main screen behind Audrey, which had shown the Aura logo, flickered. It was now a flowchart. A complex, damning flowchart of shell corporations, offshore accounts and wire transfers, all originating from a single box, at the top, William Innovations. You, Audrey said, standing and walking to the screen. Didn't think we'd run an audit before acquiring. I've had a forensic team living in your books for 6 months. They are, by the way, disgustingly messy. She pointed to a name on the chart, the William Next Gen Foundation. This one was my favorite. The slush fund you used to donate to your charities, which then paid you back in consulting fees, all while claiming it as a tax-exempt philanthropic endeavor. The very philanthropy you won that award for. Her finger traced a line. You donated $10 million, got the tax write-off, and then the foundation paid $9.8 million to a shell in the Cayman's Global Market Solutions, which my auditors found you are the sole signatory for. You used a children's literacy fund, Noah, as your personal piggy bank. Noah's face, which had been pale, now flushed a mottled, sickly grey. This was beyond a takeover. This was a criminal indictment. But that's just vanity, Noah. Audrey continued, her voice devoid of emotion. This is your masterpiece. A new chart appeared. The Q2 reports. The ones you and Mr. Carter signed off on. The ones that claimed your commercial real estate portfolio was stable. My team found you'd been inflating the assets by, what was it, David? An average of 38%. She pointed to an image of a sleek glass building. The Patriot Plaza in Chicago. You listed its value at $900 million. It's 60% vacant, and my auditors couldn't get it valued at more than $350 million, and that's being generous. You've been lying to your investors, to your board, to your creditors. And why? She said, as the final piece of the puzzle locked into place on the screen. To secure this, a $500 million bridge loan from First National. A loan you got based on fraudulent documents. A loan you didn't use for development, but to cover the catastrophic $800 million bath you took in the Singapore commodities market. A loss you never reported. She turned from the screen. That's not creative accounting, Noah. That's wire fraud. That's mail fraud. Those are multiple egregious SEC violations. That's... What, Matthew? What's the legal term? Matthew Finch, his former lawyer, looked at Noah without a hint of pity. That's a minimum of 25 years in a federal prison, Noah. At the far end of the table, Benjamin Carter, who had been shrinking in his chair, made a sound like a deflating tire. He let out a high-pitched, terrified squeal and slid sideways, his head hitting the carpet with a soft, pathetic whoomp. He was out cold. No one even flinched. But Noah was no longer listening to the words wire fraud or prison. He was staring at his wife. The numbers, the crimes, the jail time, none of it was as terrifying as her. His mind flashed back. The gala. Her simple blue dress. Her quiet, serene smile as he mocked her. Her powdering her nose to make that phone call. The microphone. You. He whispered the word, catching in his throat. His entire body went cold. The gala. My speech. His voice was a horrified rasp. You knew. You knew what I was going to say. You wanted me to. That night. You let me. You set me up. This was the moment. The realization that his company, his money, that was just the leverage. The true target was his ego. She hadn't just come for his wallet. She had come for his soul. Audrey, who had been pacing, stopped. She looked at him, and for the first time a flicker of something, not pity but perhaps curiosity, crossed her features. "Set you up, Noah?" she asked, tilting her head. "I simply gave you a stage, a microphone, and an audience. You wrote your own script. Your arrogance is so profound, so predictable, I've been able to model it on a spreadsheet for the last 5 years." She took a slow step toward him, and another. She stopped directly in front of his small, humiliating intern chair. She was the titan. He was the doodle. She looked down at him. "You had to diminish me to feel strong. You couldn't resist the urge to call me simple in a room full of your peers. You had to call me your beautiful, empty-headed charity case to make yourself feel like a master of the universe." She leaned in her voice, dropping to a whisper that cut him deeper than any shout ever could. "My hobby is now the single largest medical patent in a decade, with a market cap that makes your entire empire look like a rounding error. Your empire is a bankrupt shell built on lies and stolen money. So let me ask you one last time, Noah." Her eyes were blue ice. "Who is the charity case now?" The words didn't just register. They detonated. The air left Noah Williams' lungs in a pained, silent whoosh. The room, the faces of the board members, his jury, the screen with his crimes, his epitaph and the face of his wife, his executioner, all blurred, tilting on an axis. He tried to speak. A wet, gurgling sound was all that came out. He tried to stand. His legs, once the pillars of a colossus, were now just water. My heart," he gasped, clutching at his chest. It wasn't a lie. It wasn't a feint. The psychological shock was so profound, so absolute, his body was giving out. The master of the universe couldn't comprehend a reality that he didn't control. He lurched, not forward, but sideways, his arm flailing, grabbing at the credenza to stop his fall. His hand found the one thing he had brought to this meeting as a show of his power, the Heavy Crystal Philanthropist of the Year award. He pulled it with him. It crashed to the floor, at the same time he did, shattering into 1,000 glittering, worthless pieces. A perfect final metaphor. Noah William landed heavily, his head cracking against the solid mahogany leg of the table. He lay in the wreckage of his trophy, a broken king on a broken throne, completely and utterly undone. There was a full 5-second silence. Audrey watched him, her face impassive. She simply observed. She didn't rush to help. She didn't flinch. She just took a small, clinical breath. She stepped back, smoothing the lapel of her grey suit. "David," she said, her voice as calm as if ordering coffee. "Call security. I want Mr. Carter escorted from the premises. He is a flight risk. Then call a medical team for Mr. William. I want him on a 72-hour psychiatric hold the moment he's medically cleared. He's a liability." She turned to Matthew. "Matthew, serve his personal counsel, the ones not in this room with the divorce papers, the temporary restraining order, and the full SEC complaint. I want his personal assets frozen before he wakes up." Finally, she turned to the stunned, silent, terrified board. "Gentlemen," she said, as if brushing a piece of lint from her shoulder, "apologies for the interruption. Now, as I was saying, we have a lot of work to do. Let's talk about the future." The silence that followed Noah Williams' thud against the mahogany table was absolute. It was a vacuum, broken only by the faint, choked moans of Benjamin Carter from the floor and the distant, indifferent siren of a New York ambulance. The board members, titans of industry themselves, were frozen. They stared not at Noah's crumpled form, but at Audrey. They saw her, truly saw her for the first time. Not as a wife, not as a victim, but as a predator who had just completed a clean surgical kill. Her lack of reaction, the absence of panic, of pity, of anything, was more terrifying than any outburst. David Harrison was already on the phone, his voice a low, professional monotone. Security to the main conference room, and a medical team. Yes, 2 individuals down, 1 panic, 1 head trauma. Audrey stepped around the shattered crystal of the Philanthropist Award, as if it were simply glass on a sidewalk. She didn't look at her husband. She looked at the oldest board member, a man named Robert Stansfield, who had been on Noah's father's board. "Robert," she said, her voice pulling him from his terrified reverie. "You will act as temporary chairperson to ratify the transition. Matthew has the documents. We will reconvene in 1 hour after this has been tidied." The tidying was swift. Security arrived, 2 grim men who hoisted a babbling, weeping Benjamin Carter to his feet and escorted him out. The medical team was next, loading Noah unconscious, his face pale and slack onto a stretcher. As they wheeled him out, one of his arms hung limp, his $50,000 watch catching the light. It was the last time he would ever leave that room as its king. Audrey's orders were followed to the letter. As Noah was being transported to the hospital, Matthew Finch was filing the SEC complaint. By the time Noah was being checked into a private room, the U.S. Attorney's Office was receiving a 500-page digital file. And by the time he woke up groggy and disoriented, with a splitting headache, his world had been salted. He found himself in a standard beige-walled hospital room. The psychiatric hold Audrey had ordered was in full effect justified by his violent outburst and subsequent collapse. A nurse, impassive, informed him he was a liability. I want my lawyer." He rasped, his throat dry. "Which one?" the nurse asked, not unkindly, checking his IV. "The ones from Morgan and Finch are no longer on your retainer, and the number for your personal counsel. It's been disconnected." Panic, cold and acidic, began to rise. "My phone. Get me my phone." "It was non-responsive, sir, but it won't matter. Your accounts have been frozen by federal order. You have no access to funds. Dr. Hayes is covering this hospital stay, but your insurance has been terminated pending the fraud investigation." He was broke. Not just company broke. Personally broke. The asset freeze had been total. He was in fact a charity case. He was trapped in a hospital he couldn't pay for on the orders of a wife who was methodically erasing him from existence. He tried to scream, but all that came out was a dry, pathetic croak. The news cycle was not a wave, it was an extinction-level event. The Wall Street Journal ran the official story, "Williams' Empire, a simple fraud. Wife's secret biotech firm takes over, exposes billions in debt." But the tabloids, the cable news circuits, they had the real poison. Someone Audrey's ruthlessly efficient PR team had leaked the audio. Not just the boardroom, but the gala. All across the country, people heard Noah's booming, patronizing voice. "My beautiful, empty-headed charity case," followed immediately by a cold financial analyst's voice detailing the $800 million in wire fraud. He wasn't just a criminal. He was a joke. He was a meme. He was a national cautionary tale, all before his anesthesia had worn off. His friends vanished. His clubs, the Met. The union revoked his membership before lunch, citing moral turpitude. He was a social leper. Audrey, meanwhile, was not celebrating. She was working. She didn't move into Noah's cavernous, dark office. She had it gutted. The mahogany, the wet bar, the leather-bound books he'd never read, all of it, was torn out, carted away like debris from a bomb site. She replaced it with floor-to-ceiling whiteboards, smart glass, and data ports. It ceased to be a monument to an ego. It became a laboratory. Her first act as CEO was to call an all-hands meeting in the company auditorium. The atmosphere was thick with terror. Hundreds of employees, people who had survived Noah's brutal arbitrary firings for years, now expected the final axe to fall. Audrey walked onto the stage. No podium, no notes. "Good morning," she said. The sound system carried her clear, calm voice to every corner. "My name is Dr. Audrey Hayes. For 15 years you knew me as Noah Williams' wife. That association is over. I am your new CEO." The silence was absolute. "You are here today because you are the best at what you do." She continued, her eyes scanning the crowd. "You are the most brilliant analysts, programmers, and engineers on Wall Street, and you have been forced by threat of termination to apply your genius to a lie. You were propping up a fraudulent, parasitic system. That ends now." She took a breath. William Innovations is dead. Its name, its logo, its toxic culture are being scrubbed from this building as I speak. But its talent is being repurposed. Aura Therapeutics is a company dedicated to saving lives. From this moment on, so are you. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Your work is no longer about making one man rich. It's about modeling protein structures. It's about creating logistical systems to deliver our treatments to rural hospitals. It's about analyzing genomic data to find the next target. Your work, starting today, is about purpose. She looked into the third row at a woman who was visibly trembling. Sarah Jenkins, a quantitative analyst with a PhD from MIT, whom Noah had repeatedly called school marmish and passed over for promotion in favor of sycophants like Carter. "Sarah Jenkins," Audrey said. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "You've been running the numbers for this place from the shadows for 6 years. You're the one who built the algorithm Carter took credit for. I saw your original file on the server. You're my new chief operating officer. See me after this meeting." The entire auditorium seemed to gasp with her. It wasn't just a promotion. It was a revolution. It was a statement the sycophants were out, the talent was in. Audrey wasn't a destroyer. She was a refiner. She was cleaning the house, but she was saving the foundation. The final piece of business came a week later. Audrey was in her new, bright office. It smelled of fresh paint and ozone from the servers when her assistant buzzed. "Dr. Hayes, a Mr. Connor McDermott is here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's very insistent." "Send him in," Audrey said, not looking up from a complex equation she was sketching on her whiteboard. Connor, Noah's slimy friend, slithered in a massive, obsequious bouquet of orchids in his hands. "Audrey, my God, Dr. Hayes. What a phoenix act. I am just awestruck." He set the flowers on her minimalist desk. I had to come and say it. I always knew you were the smart one. That brute, he never deserved you. He was a pig. Audrey calmly put the cap on her marker and turned, leaning against the whiteboard. "He was Connor, and you were right there in the mud with him." Connor's smile faltered for a half-second. "Aha. Well, the business we're in, you know. Sometimes you have to. But I'm here about the Future My Fund, your company. We should be partners, whatever you need. Capital, distribution. Just say the word. Audrey looked at the orchids, then at him. She smiled a small, clinical, chilling smile. It's funny you should mention partnerships, Connor. My audit of Noah's personal accounts was exhaustive. Your name kept popping up. She tapped her tablet. The large wall monitor, which had been displaying a 3D protein model, flickered. It was now a simple ledger. This consulting fee you paid him just 2 days before he inexplicably tanked the bid on that data firm you wanted, and this friendly $5 million loan you gave him, which he then used to short a biotech stock. Your own fund was publicly praising. It looks an awful lot like collusion. Insider trading, even. Connor's tan went chalky. Now, Audrey, that's business between friends. You can't prove. I don't have to, Audrey said. But Noah is going to prison for a very, very long time. Men like him in that environment, they get desperate. They look for leverage. They look for deals. They like to talk. He's going to sing Connor. And your name is the first verse. She stood up. My legal team has already sent their findings to the U.S. Attorney. They're just deciding, I'm told, whether to name you as a material witness or a co-conspirator. I'd say your partnership offer is about a week too late. She walked to her desk, picked up the entire elaborate vase of orchids, and dumped it into the wastebasket. You can leave, Connor. He fled. Audrey Hayes stood at the window, not looking down at the city, as a map she owned that was Noah's fantasy. She saw it as a complex system of interconnected nodes, a problem to be solved. Her work had been interrupted by a 15-year-long domestic disturbance. Now the disturbance was over. She turned from the window, picked up her stylus, and on a clean white board began to sketch the equations for her next idea. The work was just beginning. Noah William was found guilty on 6 counts of fraud and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, his name erased from the buildings he built. Benjamin Carter testified against him for a reduced sentence. Connor McDermott is facing his own SEC investigation. And Dr. Audrey Hayes. Her company, Aura Therapeutics, just received FDA approval for its pediatric cancer treatment, and its valuation is now one of the largest on Earth. She proved that the loudest voice in the room is almost never the most powerful. The person they dismiss, the one they mock, the simple one they shame, is often the one holding all the cards. What did you think of Audrey's long game? Was her revenge justified, or was it as cold as Noah's own ambition? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories of justice and unbelievable real-life twists, make sure to like this video. Share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to our channel for more true stories that are stranger than fiction. Click that bell so you never miss an update.